a part of failure is also recognizing the milestones, the stepping stones, and the small significant celebrations along the way. So I'm like, okay, we didn't get to 25K, cool, but we passed, 2,500, we passed 10K, we've got 15K. How are we both measuring that? And what is the impact of the individuals? And, in 2, 3, 4 years of time, in the next, 2, 3 years, what are these individuals doing then to build up the skill sets of people as they move forward?
Sonya Barlow with us. How do you know how many people you've impacted? Are you keeping a tally?
It's a great question. So anytime we do...
Welcome to Founder Metrics by Vested, the podcast where we dive into the world of hotshot business leaders and the metrics that drive their game-changing companies forward. I'm your host, Ifti Nasser, CEO and founder of Vested. Hi, I'm Ifti, and this is Founder Metrics. Today, we've got Sonya Barlow with us. So Sonya, just as a kick-off, would it be possible for you to just give us a little insight to who you are and why you're here?
Yeah, no, I'm here because you invited me and I said yes, so that's great.
Yeah.
Who am I? So for context, I am of Pakistani heritage. I came to the UK when I was 4. I studied super hard, went to university, graduated in 2015, and then fell into the world of tech. So tech, digital transformations, fintech consulting, all of that good stuff, the big bucks, where the money is at. And then in 2018, I started LMF Network as a brunch club because I personally felt really isolated and lonely.
LMF,
like-minded females. Back then it was like-minded females, and now it's the LMF Network, and we can get on to why that transition happened if you'd like to. But in summary and in short, in 2019, I lost my job. And so in 2020, not knowing that the pandemic was coming through, I was like, oh, do you know what? This gives me a really good chance to be an entrepreneur and to take a risk on myself. And I've got the savings because I've worked and I've saved, and I've got the idea because I've built this brunch club / community forum over the last 1 year, and something seems to be working. And so since March 2020 until now, so 2023, we have grown into a social enterprise with a consulting arm where we support businesses in end-to-end diversity and inclusion and business strategy. And we reinvest those profits into our community services. So we build careers and confidence of women in the workspace through mentorship, masterclasses, and meaningful networks, because 80% of your opportunities come through your network. I also have a BBC radio show called The Everyday Hustle, which was very much a risk that the BBC took on myself and with them in terms of context, because the Asian network generally is music, and this was their first talk-only business show. It's done exceptionally well, and in 2022, it was named as best radio show in the country. I have a best-selling book called Unprepared to Entrepreneur, and my side hustles currently include drinking tea, so there's a teacup here, traveling the world and talking for a living, because I guess I'm quite blessed that I was given the confidence, the gift, absolutely. And now it's just about finessing that muscle.
Cool. So going back to gifts, you've been given loads of accolades of late, from most influential woman in tech, women's software, a change maker, through to the Marie Claire future changer list. So there's a whole pile of accolades that you've got. But it was interesting when we were talking before around just what those accolades mean to you, and how actually maybe in the future they need to be a bit different.
Yeah, I genuinely feel like a lot of things that I think in my brain might get me slightly cancelled. So I'm just trying to phrase this in a way that's probably a lot more appropriate. But when I started my journey, don't get me wrong, accolades were amazing. And it was super cool to be recognised. And you're recognised, and recognition means that you're reassured that what you're doing is showing up, you're standing up, you're making a difference. And for me, it was super beautiful that people were able to give me this recognition. Yeah. Now, I would say that anytime I've nominated myself, it hasn't worked. It's like Forbes 30 and 33 years, I was shortlisted. I didn't get that final award, right? But you didn't get that accolade. But for me now, at this point where I am in my life and my business and my own career, given that there's still a gender parity gap, and given that we're still kind of, fighting for female equality in every aspect possible, I just wish that accolades came with a little bit more than just a trophy. For me, it might be, actually, you've won an award, and so as a gift or as a congratulations, we're going to put you in this round table with these business folks you would have never met, or a little bit of funding. And in 2022, I did not nominate myself, and actually it was around the time where I was tired and I kind of wanted to quit. I had Bash, which is a female-founded luxury brand in Paris, approach me and saying, we want to give you UK Entrepreneur of the Year. I'd never heard of them. But I guess the reason I'm bringing that to your attention is because as a result of winning that accolade or being recognized, not only did I have my own blazer in store, which was great because I love suits and blazers, but all the profits of that blazer actually went into the LMF network.
Brilliant.
And so for me, that wasn't performative allyship in any kind. It was, here's an achievement, here's how we're going to actually support you, and here's what the positive consequence of you being recognized is, which means that we can then reinvest into your business to help it grow.
That's actually excellent. I mean, it will have helped them as well.
Absolutely, of course.
As part of the
It's a
giving you that
mutual
reward.
benefit for both parties, right? I mean, there's a commercial gain for them, but there's also a commercial gain for us, which is what's really going to help us when we're, still fighting this fight.
Yeah. So going back to the accolades, in of themselves, you don't see them as an important metric for yourself.
Not anymore. I used to. Yes, I did. And I think I definitely used to. Now there's like maybe different accolades that I want, like the Veuve Clicquot or the Cartier Award. And maybe it's the point of like, these are the next step of accolades that I'd like to be recognized for, or like an MBE or an OBE, which bring not only a level of status, but a level of recognition and reassurance. I know you were like, when you said that, you're like, really? I was like, well...
No, absolutely, why not?
Why not?
Immigrant has made a massive contribution to the country. Why should you not aspire to that?
And the economy.
Yeah, and I guess that was meant in what I was saying as well. Before we go to the economic interest and the stuff like the everyday hustle, let's start with the LMF, which, as you mentioned, is a non-for-profit. It's as a founder, certainly within the commercial space, founders have all sorts of business metrics that they're looking for. But being a non-for-profit, what are the things that you look for as important signals for yourself that things are going well or they're not going well? From a enterprise perspective.
It's a really interesting question, and I only raise that because I didn't know social enterprises or not-for-profits existed prior to 2020. I thought there was a commercial business that was a limited or self-employment, and then, so forth, so forth. So we're a community interest company by design, and what that basically means is we're not a charity.
Yeah.
So we do have a commercial gain, and so commercials are important for us. So one metric is the revenue that we're kind of, obtaining, our cash flow and or any bids that we're winning. But what it does mean is we have therefore access to certain grants that limited business would not have. So for us in the beginning, the first year, especially in 2020, was just, hey, let's build something and see if people show up. Yeah. That was the metric. Then in 2021, it was like, oh, okay, now people are showing up. Now, how can we convert these into paid users or customers? Okay, that happened too. We worked with Babbel, we worked with Steady, we worked with Barclays, we worked with PwC, we worked with, a number of other entities, and they paid me for our workshops, our events, and our database, at least. And then in 2022, it was, okay, how can we sustain financial growth? And so I guess the metrics are very similar in terms of any commercial business, but it's more about what you do with that money.
But even with that, so you say about there was the money that came in from people rewarding you or paying you for the service you give. What proportion of your economic existence came from the government or funds rather than the return or the reward payment for the work that you did?
It's a really interesting question. So until this date, we haven't charged people.
Right.
And so that's something we're looking into now. So in 2020 and 2021, 2022, we had a mentoring program, and we've mentored over 1,000 people, the 90% success rate. It's all been free. Now we're putting a commercial standpoint in to generate that revenue. About when you're asking about grants and consultancy work, the large percentage of our work comes through consultancy and or delivery of a service. The grant, I would say, makes up less than 5% of our income. Okay. And that is because it is very difficult to access grants. There's a lot of T's and C's. And there's a lot of, an example being, there was a grant fund that approached us. And they were like, we'd love to give you a grant. Here's all that you have to fill out. But the minimum you have to have in your bank is 150K. I'm like, if I had 150K in my bank, I probably wouldn't be needing this grant in the same way, right? Yeah. So it's how do we support the small businesses that are starting up, like, the Rose Review, which was done by Alison Rose and NatWest, to show to that there's more businesses being founded by females. I agree with that. I think it's amazing. But where is the research to say how many businesses are being sustained that are female founders, because that's the difficult part. It's super easy to start a business.
That's a really interesting point. The fact that, there's all the backing for female founders to get started, but where is the support for helping them maintain and sustain that
and that
journey?
was my point about accolades earlier. It was not like, oh, I don't like the awards. Everyone likes a shiny trophy. You know, if you gave it to me, I'd still be like, oh my God, thank you so much. But the point is, I've started that business. I'm working really hard to drive it forward. Now, all the organizations and you know, companies that are saying we want to help the female founded businesses grow, what are you actually doing to make that a reality?
Okay.
Because less than 4% are funded. It's still super inaccessible to gain grants or any kind of like charitable funding. And we're still playing this, you know, reputation and branding game, which is really difficult.
You yourself are a female founder, so you've got that piece. But
I'm also brown, so I've also got the brown piece. So if you're going to tick all the boxes,
you've probably got a few others. We'll come on in a few
exactly.
minutes. But I was just thinking, you've both got that that authenticity, but you also have a voice.
Yeah.
So given that you've got that voice, you can actually probably make a big contribution to making the changes that you're talking about. So what are the things that you're doing on that front? Are you working with government on this stuff? Are you using your platform? How are you using your platform? Tell me more.
It's a great question. So we did some research in 2021 that found the 3 reasons to why women don't progress, either entering or progress in the workspace, is due to lack of confidence, lack of career knowledge, and lack of community. So given that I also started LMF Network because I was fairly isolated and quite lonely without a sense of network, a big contribution that we're trying to provide is the access to networks and a very nominal, if not, you know, minimal price, where 80% of your opportunities can come through. So that will be monthly co-working, those will be our mentoring programs, as well as kind of the ad hoc coffee meetups, which we do. We cover about 24 countries right now.
Wow.
And we're 100% remote. So I've got a remote team, there's 5 of us, part-time, and that's by design, so that we can globalize our perspective, but also localize, because we're in the D&I space and it's important to know what's going on where you are.
Yeah.
And then in terms of actual access, so a really good example being through our mentoring program, we've had someone achieve a 25k pay rise. And they paid £100 for mentorship, which covered our fees. But in exchange, they were able to gain 25k. We've had individuals who have styled, you know, celebrities at the BAFTAs and the Brits. We've had individuals who have said no and set boundaries and taken themselves out of spaces that are uncomfortable. So for me, it might not be a economical contribution, but the contribution that we're providing in terms of confidence building, career knowledge and networking is invaluable. And we've seen the testimonials come up. And going back to your point about impact and metrics, yes, it's really important to have a commercial viewpoint, which is now where I'm at with my business in terms of us pivoting and moving forward. But in the beginning, it's just someone coming up to you being like, oh my God, you started this and this is how it's succeeded. This is how you've helped me. You know, we've had people become bridesmaids of each other that they've only met a few months ago, because we're building long-term sustained relationships and enabling everyone to have their version of a voice so that they can create change where they are, versus just one person saying the same or similar things.
But you said that you've got 5 people, you're in 25 countries. Metrics are not just the economics, and we'll come on to that in a moment. But one of your targets, one of your aspirations is helping 25,000 people by 2005.
It's an accident, but it definitely became a target.
Okay, so it's a target. How do you know how many people you've impacted or supported? Are you keeping a tally?
It's a great question. So every time we do a workshop, a delivery or a service design, we actually have an Excel sheet that we write down how many people we've generally that have been in the room. We also get feedback and testimonials. And what we realized is, so the reason I say that was an accident is because I was being interviewed for London Tech Week last year when I won the award, and I said that out loud and they clipped it and then pushed it out. And then my team were like,
became reality
team were like, what have you just done? I was like, it's okay, we can do it. But one thing that we realized is you also have to reach people at their medium of choice.
Yeah.
And so we started a podcast. Everyone has a podcast, which is great. But for us, it's about storytelling, representation. So we're also collecting the views, the unique views, the impressions, the reach, and thinking about what are the metrics that are organic that we can capture, and how can we justify this 25K movement. And it's not just about, we've, physically helped 25K people. It's we've been able to reach 25 different people through this period with unique reach and impressions, which means that, you know, they're a unique identity. And then we're receiving testimonials and the
So
feedback.
where are you now on that journey? On your tally to 25,000?
We're about halfway there.
Brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Like, we did a tally at the start of the year, and we're about halfway there, both with the likes, listens, views, but also the people that show up in our day-to-day.
And in terms of hitting that number, which I'm sure you will, I'm sure you'll go way past
Actually, this is
it.
probably the first time I've said it both out loud and someone's ever asked me where you are, you know? So even for me, it's that moment of, oh, okay, not only do we try and reach that, but we are kind of getting
Well, it sounds
there.
like you're halfway in time as well. But I listened to your TED Talk on failure and being willing to fail, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. And it's something that people do need to be, you know, you will know, you know, more founders fail than succeed. 90 odd % of businesses won't make it past go, for want of a better phrase. But that whole notion of failure, if you were to not meet that 25,000 by the end of 2025, how would you handle that and what would you do? I think I know, but I don't want to
I think I'll be
prejudge.
okay.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, look, failure is a really subjective term. So I might have failed that big number, but for me, a part of failure is also recognizing the milestones, the stepping stones, and the small significant celebrations along the way. So I'm like, okay, we didn't get to 25K, cool, but we passed, you know, 2,500. We passed 10K. We've got 15K. How are we both measuring that, and what is the impact of the individuals? And, you know, in 2, 3, 4 years of time, in the next, you know, 2, 3 years, what are these individuals doing then to build up the skill sets of people as they move forward? So I don't know, I like failure. I'm very good at failing, and if anything, it's a running joke, probably in my own brain actually, to be like, just fail as fast as you can and get it out of the way
and move on.
and just move on. And so for me, failure is not this big like, oh my God, I failed, you know, type of thing. Yeah, when I fail, like when I really fail. So when I mean really fail, I mean like I lose like a proposal that we've bid for, right? That we've been spending months doing and it doesn't go through. Or I know the first time that I didn't get the Forbes 30 and the 30. That for me was like somewhat of a failure, but I probably took half a day off. I cancelled my calendar. I got Ben and Jerry's. I had a cup of tea. I watched Netflix, and I really allowed myself just to feel my feelings. And then I went to sleep and I woke up all good the next day. And I think that's really important with founders too, is you have to give yourself time to feel your feelings and go with the flow, because not everything's going to be a win, but you can't feel the highs if you can't feel the lows.
Absolutely. You won't be surprised that you're not the first person to say that, but it is such an important, powerful thing. And I think just picking up on the failure piece, it's amazing how few founders or people generally share their failures. You know, why isn't there loads of TikToks about the last fail? Because I think that will encourage people to feel the way that you do, which is seeing the failures as actually a piece of learning and an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, and I think look, I'm online and I'm very happy to be online, but it does bring a sense of burnout because everything right now is pretty and pleasing, and I'm like, this is not reality. When I go on TikTok and it's like my day in the life of, and everything looks super curated, I'm like, I don't know how your day looks that great, but ordinary people who are running businesses, we're not always done up and like, you know, color coordinated. We're in our trackies trying to get things done, chasing clients, working really late into the hours into the day, and often questioning why we're doing it. And then constantly being like, you know what, if I just quit today, it'll be okay. Like if I just run away and I hide, it'll be fine. And so I try and use my online profile and presence to be really honest about, I've done this and it hasn't worked, but this is what I'm doing now as a result of that. And this is how we're moving forward. And, you know, equally, I could be better too. But I think social media is great in some ways, but in other ways, exactly to your point, it doesn't recognize failure. Because people are like, oh, if we fail, it's a massive mistake. It's like, no, but you're failing every single day in everything you're doing. It's just recently we've put this big weight on it to be like, oh, you can't be a failure. And I'm like, I am a failure. If anything, I really am. And I'm okay with, like, I need one of those badges, you know, that's been like, I'm a big failure. I'd be good with that.
So as one of your metrics, why wouldn't it be to keep a tally of your failures?
Yeah.
I know that in your TED talk you tally up the fact that you spilt some tea or
Honestly,
you made
it's
some
probably
silly
like
little mistakes.
the
They are
burning
little
the omelette.
mistakes.
It's probably the
Yeah.
burning the omelette, which is from my siblings, and
Yeah.
they're like, "You still can't make an omelette." I'm like, "No, but I can make a cheesecake." They're like, "It's not the same thing, but it's great that you're improving." I do. You know, we built a tech app. We've got an app ready. It's 75% ready, and I've slept in it for a whole year.
Why?
I think maybe I got a little bit scared. Maybe you felt like a bit of an imposter. Maybe you didn't quite know what you were doing with it. And that to me is a failure. The failure is not the fact that it didn't work. The failure is the fact that I didn't even give it a chance to give it a go to see if
Tell
it
me
was going
more
to work.
about the app.
So it kind of came from a place of impulse. So what I'm trying to do now is trying to make less impulsive decisions. But we built a tech app in the background to very much automize and support our mentoring program, meaning that you could find your networks, find your mentors, be included in the program of services, but also get access to like podcasts, video content, and some masterclasses that we've posted
So
on this
this is
one app.
part of LMF.
It's everything I do is
Yeah.
pretty much part of LMF.
Well, apart from the everyday hustle.
Apart from the contract with the BBC, absolutely. And so, I kid you not, it's pretty much a year to date, to the point where my developers got back in touch. And he's like, "You've had a year to sleep on it. What do you think you're going to do?" And actually, it's funny because the last few days I've been sleep dreaming. But what I mean by that is I've been sleeping, but ideating in my brain.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of founders do that. So I wake up with like all this, oh my God, this is going to work and it's going to be great. And now I'm going back to them to be like, okay, how do we add this one feature into it? This is what I think is missing in the market. Let's just beta launch it this year and see if it works. So for me, the failure is, why did you not give it a try and see what happens?
When are you going to let it free?
Hopefully the end of the year. I'm just waiting on the devs to cover what needs to be covered. And the thing is, you've already put so much investment into it. Another couple of grand is not going to make a massive difference.
It's not.
in the greater scheme of things, right? And that's not coming from like a privileged place. It's coming from a place of, if you've already invested X amount in building this app, the least you can do is finish it off and put it into the
reality,
ecosystem and reality and get the feedback from your customer versus having the feedback in your head.
Yeah. Because I guess, as with all founders, the only real feedback worthy of anything is those people who are paying you for or rewarding you for the service. But yeah, I guess a little bit of feedback on that one. Yeah, until you've got it out there, nothing's going to change. Those things in your head will carry on running around.
Absolutely.
And even if it's a beta launch or whatever, just get it out there.
That's the thing.
Get some learning.
And I think that's probably what I want to share with everyone is you don't know what you don't know until you put it out there. And so a big part of what I've done, including having our own podcast, including LMF Network, including a book, including even speaking out loud, is I'm never going into it being like, I know everything. If anything, I'm like, you know what? This is an iterative process. This is like my ideation board. I'm going to do this for a period, see what the feedback is, and then keep on going and then moving it forward.
Do learn, do.
Exactly.
Just get it out there and
I think
start learning.
That's what makes founders different, you know? That's what makes founders who can sustain running a business different. It's really easy to one day make a business, put it in company's house, and to be like, I'm now an entrepreneur. It's really difficult to constantly challenge yourself, problem solve, fail, and pragmatically think, reassess metrics, and then keep on moving forward when everything is saying to you, this is self-inflicted.
These are choices.
Absolutely.
We choose to be founders.
Yeah.
There are lower risk, lower stress journeys to go on.
I always say to people, I'm like, don't feel sorry for me. This is all self-inflicted.
Yeah.
I chose to live a life where there's a bunch of dots and I'm figuring out how to connect to them. Like that was my choice because energy is my asset and I choose to live this life. If it's different in 5, 10, 7, 15 years, that's okay too.
So with LMF coming along now and the app as well, there's going to be a need for you to probably put in even more effort, potentially bring more people on. Is that something that you're looking forward to doing? You talk about this 5 people, remote based. It's been how you've been working for the last year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking forward to having more responsibilities, more people? Is that an important metric for you?
You know, it's really funny you use the word responsibility, because I think that's a metric that we often don't associate with founders. And so I'm getting my mind, body, and soul ready for extra responsibility. I don't necessarily believe in New Year's resolutions. And so I had 3 words of the year for 2023: limit, fun, and recover. So limiting myself, my time, my energy, having fun and enjoying things that I'm doing, and recovering. Because actually, I personally, from a professional and personal standpoint, have done a lot in the last 3 years. It's not that other people haven't either, but you know, there's research coming out to suggest that during the pandemic, it's only now that it's really hitting us as to what's happened and who we are and how we've kind of progressed over that time. And I feel like in the last 3 years, I've literally been running and running and running. And I personally don't know anyone else who can do this amount of stuff in a very condensed period of time. But now I want to recover my energy and I'm recharging because I'm ready for that responsibility. And I don't think I was this year. And maybe that's one reason I delayed the tech app, because a part of me was like, I don't want that extra bit of responsibility. I kind of want to enjoy what I've built so far. So to answer your question in summary, I think I am ready for that responsibility. I'm also ready for the responsibility of more money, of extra finances, of managing money. I'm also ready for the responsibility of being firm with staff members and team members and colleagues and knowing exactly what good looks like. I'm also ready for the responsibility of building out this community first company, which has already changed so many people's lives, including myself. And now it's just ready for the world. It's ready to influence the world. So the fact that I'm picking up on the word responsibility is because for the last few days I've been thinking, what is it that's really stopping me from going to A to Z? And it's that level of responsibility. And because I'm the eldest kid and I'm the first daughter, and I think just being like South Asian and whatnot, I think I've just put a lot of responsibility on myself. Not to say it probably wasn't given to me as well. So I'm kind of enjoying this time without putting more.
Well, it's interesting because you said earlier, responsibility is not something that you associate with founders.
No.
I would actually say it's absolutely the opposite. I think a founder has to take and is taking responsibility for all those people that decide to join them on that journey.
And I'm learning that more and more
whether it's
now.
5 people, whether it's 50 people, those people chose to join that founder, and the responsibility for them, I think, has to be paramount in that person's mind.
And now I'm learning that. And remember, we spoke about failure earlier and also being a founder. No one taught me how to be a CEO overnight. I decided that I wanted to be one. At the same time, I was writing a book, doing a radio show, building my own personal brand. It was a lot to do in a short period of time. And so I wouldn't say one area lacked focus. I would say I was able to give my energy to different assets, that now I'm in a space where I'm like, okay, if you think of an upside down triangle, I've done all of this. Now focus it in on what do I really want to do. And your point about responsibility, I guess those are not natural skill sets that when someone's like, oh, what does it take to be a founder? No one says you have to be responsible, but it's so important for you, your company, your finances, your accounts, your taxes, your cash flow. And you also have to be firm. And both of those things are, now I'm like, okay, I'm actually ready to be a sustained business. I'm ready to be a sustained founder. I'm ready to really grow my business in a way which makes financial sense. After 3 years, a lot of things didn't work, but a lot of things did work. And so I wouldn't say in the first 3 years, would I be like, I was a business owner? I'd be like, yeah, but I kind of wasn't. Now I really want to be a business owner. And that's a whole different mindset that I'm personally getting myself ready for.
So when you talk about that mindset to move to a sustainable business, a longer term business, and you talk about your brand, so these two are inextricably linked. And we talk a lot about metrics for businesses, as we said earlier. But how do you talk about metrics for your brand? Because the simple thing would be how many views you get on TikTok or Insta or whatever. But how would you gauge success of a brand for an individual and potentially then for an organisation like LMF?
It's really funny because when I first started, it was numbers. It was, oh, I've got 0 on LinkedIn. Now I want 1,000. Then I want 10,000. And now I've got 32,000. And I'm like,
Brilliant.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's great. But at what point is that enough? And at what point is that not enough, right? You can always go forward. Same with my Instagram. In 2020, it started with 0, and now it's nearly 10K. But actually, the interesting thing is, it's not necessarily the views or the likes. It's the value that you're giving to others. It's the message that you're sharing. It's the opportunities that come at the back of it. So I love to travel, but I was really scared of making a YouTube channel. And it was actually my siblings who encouraged me to do so. And they encouraged me to do most things, right? So it's not I'm scared as in like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. It was more like, oh, who's going to watch me? And like,
absolutely.
Who's going to care? And they were like, no, do it anyway. And so Jan 2023, I started a YouTube channel and I started posting a few of my travel bits. And then I had an opportunity with Intrepid Travel to go on a press media trip for one of their tours in Turkey. And that happened within 6 months. Does my YouTube channel get the most views in the world? No. But clearly, people think it adds value. There's a enjoyable essence to it. It provides information. It's educational and also representative. And so I was invited on that trip.
Yeah.
That is what a metric or a measure of success is. Mine is, if I'm going to give this a go, let's do it for 6 months and let's see what opportunities come at the back of that. And my measure of success is 1. If I can have one big, massive, great opportunity, it's all good. It's great. I no longer look at the views or the likes or the followers because 1, there's a lot of ghost accounts. 2, the audience isn't always engaged and relevant to you. And 3, just because someone likes something doesn't mean they're going to buy something, right? So
going back to the awards.
Exactly, right? And I think it's all about, I owe people who are following me, I owe them honesty and transparency and to be authentic.
Yeah.
I owe myself, but I also owe other women, especially, women of color who are looking at role models or representation to be like, how did you make it and how did you grow? And I'm like, just looking at number metrics is a great starting point. And it's really important when you start. But at some point, it's not good enough because you have to know what opportunities are coming through, what business opportunities are coming through. So I would say 75 to 80% of business to this day is inbound.
For you?
For us.
Brilliant.
I've only now started doing outbound, right? And I've only now...
And why did you make that choice? Why did you think about doing outbound, given that you had such a torrent of inbound? Because
it's not sustained income.
Right.
Because to your point earlier, we're looking to grow, we're looking to scale. I'm looking to be very firm in this new or kind of, elevated business model that I want to run. That I want to, you spoke about your brand, your professional, your personal brand. I don't want me to be LMF Network. I want it to be its own entity. And I want Sonya Barlow to be its own entity, which I think is better for the future in terms of what we choose to do. And I also want to be in a position where financially we're bringing in that money, at least giving it a go for, I would say, about 12 months before I make that decision if I want to go raise investment or if I want to stay bootstrapped. Okay.
So when you go and raise investment, you'll have different pressures put on you by your investors. It's inevitable. It happens, as I'm sure you're aware. Question for you would then be, you talk about the Sonya Barlow brand, you talk about the LMF brand, you've also got the Everyday Hustle brand. Your investors have put money into LMF. They want you to focus in there. How are you going to handle that? How do you balance that? Do you let go of things then?
I think so. And the reason why we haven't gone for investment, despite being asked, is because I wasn't ready to let go of things. And the reason why I'm now thinking of investment, potentially, is because I'm ready to let go of things, and I'm ready to focus, and I'm ready to build an actual business. And I've done it the other way around. I think I've built my personal brand first, and then I focused on my business. But now I've seen the perks of building your personal brand, and I think they're amazing. But also, there's only so many events you can be invited to before you're like having to decline an invite, you know?
Yes.
Or so many gifts that you can receive before you're like, oh, another one? Like, I'll wear it. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But I want to see that same success. I want to see my face light up in building a business and overcoming challenges. So one of the reasons why I'm trying to, and I say the word trying because I'm still figuring it out, right? To separate Sonya Barlow and LMF is because I really want to focus on LMF as a sustained business, make it grow, work with investors, and know that actually when you bring advisors and investors, they all have their different moments and their says and their metrics. How am I going to be able to manage them whilst a team, whilst take responsibility for this business? And so that's why a lot of what I'm doing right now is educating myself and asking questions and being curious.
How are you educating
yourself? I'm
yourself?
going to people who've raised investment, and I'm like, what are the perks? What are some of the naysays? How do you work with your investors? How did you go through the process? What do you like about investment? Is it just a quick buck? Are you just trying to make a quick exit? Like, what does that look like? And it's really interesting because I love to holiday, right? And I don't invest like in fancy bags or fancy cars. I'm like, a holiday and a wellness trip is really important for me. One of my friends, I was like, when's your next holiday? She's like, holiday? What are you talking about? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I've just raised investment and my investors aren't really keen on us going on holiday, and I have to sign off my every penny to them. And I was like, oh, well, I'm definitely not ready for investment because I'm not at that point yet. And so I guess the other point is financial independence. Sonya Barlow can do what Sonya Barlow wants with her money.
Absolutely.
Sonya Barlow cannot and should not do what she wants with the LMF money.
Absolutely.
So separating the two gives me headspace to be like, hey, if I want to go on a 5-star resort and blow my money, I can do that with the funds that I'm gaining. That's not coming through the LMF fund.
Yeah, I mean, that's an inevitability. Yeah, I think people have maybe a deluded view of the money that comes in through investment. That investment is to make that business move forward. It's not to give you a fancy life and
exactly right.
Sport car.
And also at that same point, if I came to you and I was like, Ifti, I've built LMF to this extent. This is how much money I've put into it. This is how much money of my own I failed with. These are the extra costs that I've mismanaged my money, but I've done all of that with my own income.
Yeah, but they're also
you might
parts
be more
of the
confident.
They're also parts of the learning.
Exactly, but you may be more confident, therefore, to be like, wait, okay, if she's happy to risk her own funds and she's made this work, then I know that she might be able to look after my money a lot better.
Indeed.
Which I think is a big part
because
of raising investment.
Because she's a little bit smarter than when she started off.
Absolutely.
Whatever she's lost of her own, that's
exactly.
tough.
And that's what I want to get to. I want, when I do, and if I do go for investment, I want to be able to sit with potential founders or investors to be like, listen, I've invested 25K and this is the result of that over 3 years. We're profitable, we're making money, but we've also got a bunch of things wrong. But because I've got it wrong on my own funds, I can pretty much guarantee you I won't get it wrong with your funds.
Yeah.
That's
you
more
certainly
of a
won't
sound
make
investment.
those mistakes.
We won't make the same mistakes. You make
there will be
ones.
other mistakes. There will invariably
if you're with me,
be
probably,
more
definitely.
mistakes without question. So yeah, the everyday hustle. We'll come back to LMF. Yeah, you talked about diversity and inclusion and the way that you're trying to build out in terms of the education side of LMF. People are paying for that at the moment. Is it something that, with the cost of living crisis, with the challenges that businesses are having, is that becoming people realizing actually we need to spend more on this because we need to get our teams fully integrated and doing more? Or are you seeing that as one of the first things that are being chopped off the budgets?
Yeah, that's probably, well, firstly, it's a great question. Year on year, the growth for initiatives around diversity and inclusion are increasing anywhere between 30 to 50%, slower now than 2020. However, given the cost of living, the amount of layoffs and redundancies, diversity and inclusion is a nice to have. It's not a necessity. So it's one of the first places where your budgets are cut. When we started doing D&I work in 2020, I always knew that it wasn't going to be a sustained revenue model. And so one reason as to why we are, I don't love the word pivoting, but, adapting our business is because we know that diversity inclusion is not going to bring us the same funds in.
If from a leadership perspective, I'm looking at my team and seeing how can we help this team perform at its best. And it's not about bringing in new diversity to augment it. It's we have diversity within this team already.
Absolutely.
How do we ensure that this team is as well lubricated, as efficiently running smoothly as it can? And that's where the guidance on making sure you facilitate inclusion
absolutely.
is even more important. When you're short of money, we need to make whatever's going well. So how are you pushing that aspect?
A lot of it comes from engagement surveys, metrics, capturing and understanding where your people currently are, doing a bottom-up approach, which is what we do. So understanding what your people want and then building the right initiatives accordingly over at least a minimum of a 3-month period. And making sure that it's an area of focus that's very much the foundation of the business. A big part of what we do is also we want to give you the tools and resources so that you can very much do that as you move forward. But what's happening now is, learning and development, talent budgets are being cut regardless. And so a lot of the work that's being done is, we have a very minimal budget to do this work. And actually there are people in the organization that want to take responsibility of doing it. And so they're being passed on the baton. Also, if you go on LinkedIn, every 1 in 5 person is a D&I expert at this point. So there's a enhanced competition, but that doesn't mean that they come with the receipts or the expertise.
But it's that. So firstly, I agree that everybody is a D&I expert, or there's certainly a lot more than there were 10, 20 years ago. But the piece I'm trying to get to is, given your platform, why are you not helping organizations realize that actually this is the time that this is where you need to invest? So people will cut marketing, and it might not be the...
It's not that, it's we are, and we do that through workshops, events, engagement surveys, reporting, auditing. So it's less about this is what you need to do right now. It's more that there's also purchasing power from the organizational standpoint. So they have less budget, but they expect you to do more work. And also proposals are taking anywhere between 3 to 5 months to sign off. We've got 5 proposals. On average, they are worth 25K.
Right.
It's taken us nearly 6 months and constant meetings and back and forth to even get there. So it's also not an organization's fault, right? Right now, organizations, their focus is finding revenue and business development. And so business development, they have a particular skill set for that. In terms of employee engagement, building the culture, that fix is also not overnight. So what businesses are doing based on the cost of living crisis is they're looking for short-term wins. D&I is not a short-term win, it's a long-term win. And so there is investment there. But to your point, given that we're in this industry, there's not as much investment as there was. And also if there is investment, rather than being 3 companies going for that pot of money, there's 30 companies going for it. So there's heightened competition. And also what people don't talk about is doing D&I work is really taxing and really traumatic. And you're basically...
Why is it traumatic?
Because...
That's a very strong word.
Yes. But I have workplace trauma, which now becomes my story when you go into organizations and that's what they want to hear. So firstly, you're repeating things that are constantly happening to you for you to be in that position where you feel like you can then go and create change. Secondly, it's then you are listening to a lot of people's problems within the workspace. And some of them can be quite emotional and quite frustrating and quite triggering for yourself, but also for them. And they can, but that's kind of your job role. And then you're going to have to then invest in your own well-being, wellness, therapy, or kind of time out because you don't want to bring burnout. So actually, there's no wonder where, it's no wonder that a lot of D&I individuals who are in leadership positions are stepping back, because what happens is because they're in that spot, it's like everything, you need to be responsible to fix everything, and that's not possible. But also we need to give them a little bit of space to also figure out what they don't know. So actually EDI is amazing, and organizations should invest in it, but it should be its own business unit. The finances should be established every financial year. You should have someone who is responsible for that unit, but accountable. Everyone in the workspace should be accountable. You should work with external organizations, of course you should. But also you should take a little bit of time out and say, you know what, some of the stuff that we go through, like psychological safety or workplace bullying or micromanagement or aggression, actually some of it can be quite triggering for people.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't recognize that.
So, firstly, I fully appreciate that. But when you're trying to help people understand the value of this, how do you make it tangible? What are the metrics that you help them with that are tangible, measurable?
So data points. Good example being there's the McKinsey study that shows that if you have diverse teams, it increases your profits by 30%. Research that we've done shows that less than 50% of people know what diversity inclusion means.
Yeah.
And yet more than 75% would like it implemented in an organization. Mentorship. If you are a mentor, you're 5 times more likely to be promoted. If you're a mentee, you're on average 18 months more likely to stay in your business and reduce cost of retention. And reduce the cost of someone leaving, which is 1.5 times their salary. So you have to talk in business terms. You have to show the metrics, data points, testimonials of what you've done before, clear changes that you've made in terms of case studies and reference points where relevant, but also by investing 30K today, we're going to inevitably save you 90K in the next 2 years. You have to create a business case.
And given it is a business case, it's always a business case, what then prevents them from realizing the economic sense of this?
The money internally. If you haven't budgeted for EDI at the start of your financial year, then what's happening is people are literally they're finding money, or they're building business cases, right? Or they're like, oh, that's great, but we don't have this much, we have this much. So you're having to make do with what you have, basically. You don't want to let people down, and you also have to some extent play the game. But in summary, when you are doing financial budgeting for the year, you should have a D&I pot that you can kind of
So what are you going to do this year to alert or advise or help businesses be ready for you to come to them next year?
So at the start of the year, we started doing monthly EDI brunches. So we had different professionals come through, and we've now done over 5, and we've had over 100 people. We've also started documenting them through YouTube and through feedback forms. We've also started doing more content around EDI, but not just EDI specific, mentorship, growth, learning and development through our personal and professional channels. I've also started actually having one-to-one conversations with the EDI leads and or those who are in the marketing, learning and development or management teams to understand what their challenges are. We're not trying to sell them anything. We're just trying to say, what are the problems? Education. Get back in touch with them to say, hey, Ifti, you raised a really good point. I wasn't able to answer it there and then, but here's an article that I think would be really interesting for you, and keeping that engagement going. And then getting in touch with them before financial years to be like, we understand that the financial year is renewing next year. What can we do to help you create that business case for EDI? Having all of our assets ready.
Because you'll have had all the experience, all the challenging questions that people can't answer.
We've got all of our decks ready. We've got our menu cards ready. We've got our price points ready. We've got our testimonials ready.
Fantastic.
And what we've actually been doing over the last few weeks is we've been interviewing freelancer pools for EDI and having different people in different skill sets, creating little CVs in our deck. So when we push them out, we're like, not only do we have the people to help you, but we also know your challenges and here's how we can help them solve it. So I love that question because this is where I was stuck in 2022. And I've spent the first 6 months of 2023 really trying to figure this bit out so that in 2024, it's an easier process.
With all those people that you're looking to bring on board, there's a few ideas that I'd love to share with you.
I would love that, obviously.
Absolutely. Because I think it's a really important mission that you're on. I think there's a couple of other things then. Firstly, in terms of the everyday hustle, I love it. I've heard a handful of the podcasts and the way in which you come into it. A bit of an education for me as well in terms of certainly how you do your summaries at the end, what you've learned, or even halfway through. It's really powerful. So if LMF goes to the skies over the next few months and years, and that has to fall to the wayside, all that audience that you've built up, what will you do with it? How will you utilize that?
I think what we have to remember first is that Everyday Hustle is a BBC production,
right?
And so it's a BBC contract.
But it's part of the Sonya Barlow brand. Would you not say?
It's funny because I think it's actually part of the BBC brand. Yes, it's part of the Sonya Barlow brand, and I think we just kind of came together to figure out what our brand looks like together. I love love doing it. Like it's every Monday. On a Sunday night, I will go to sleep with butterflies. I'll wake up early on a Monday. I will be like super pepped. But also at LMF, we have a 4-day working week. Generally, I work about, 6.5 days.
Yeah.
But Mondays generally are off. So Monday's my BBC day.
Yeah.
But my team members also either choose to work Mondays or they don't. So it depends on what works with their timelines, and it's fine. So it's more of a, if I'm not doing LMF, I don't really expect you to do it either. So we're a task-based, not time-based organization to start with. The second thing is the way that any kind of production runs is you have to get renewed. And so we're just waiting on it year by year in terms of what works, right? So it's really important to recognize. And the third thing is that actually by being on the Everyday Hustle, I have also been able to interview such amazing people that a lot of my business learnings come from interviewing people and asking them the questions that I really want to know. And that helps me to make strategic business decisions. So I think it's benefited me more than they probably know. It's definitely benefited them. I mean, they've got a whole kind of...
And they got some profile and
great kind of pieces at the back of it. But in terms of that audience isn't just the people you follow. It's how do you keep in touch with the guests that come on. So I personally will engage with them on socials. I will show up to their events. I will, promote their products. I will check in with them over the next few months to see how you're doing, what's going on. And so just like anything, it's great if you've got an audience or a following, but if they're not engaged and or if you're not building those relationships, then they're actually like worthless. And so for me, I'm also not trying to be performative, or I'm trying to live my own values in the way of, you don't need to I've got over 100 episodes. I wouldn't say I know all 100 people very well, but I'd say, I'd say about 25 to 30% of them you're engaging with on a regular basis so that you can grow together and they can support you as well.
I think that's certainly, given both the audience and the folk that you interview, there is a lot of mutual learning because there's lots of cultural camaraderie. There's experiential sharing. I think they're brilliant. I really do.
I'm glad that this is on video and that I can send it to my manager at the BBC to be like, look, people love it. And they do, and they really do love it. And I, as a public speaker or as a podcaster or just as a human being trying to do stuff, because it's, founder metrics, one of my metrics of success is just getting a DM or a message being like, Sonya, I heard that and this is how I used it. Sonya, it was great what you were able to deliver. Because of you, I've been able to take that step. And I think as people, we're very quick to give negative reviews. That's just us as humans, right? But if someone is going on a public stage and presenting for you, the least you can do is smile. That is my metrics of success, is just someone smiling at you. Or if you've heard something that you think is really profound, drop them a DM and be like, you know what, you made a really great point. I wouldn't fully agree with everything, but it was really great to hear it. And this is what I've done at the back of that. That, I think, for me as both a founder and a media representative and as an author and as a content creator and whatever other title I might have, that is ultimately what the metrics come down to, is someone saying, well, I heard your story. And because I heard your story, I was brave enough to show up in my own space and take up space and set boundaries and do my thing. And I'm so much happier or more productive or kind of affluent as a result of that. And that's all I need.
And there's 100 more questions I could ask you, and certainly in terms of the
feel free.
The inspiration for
I've got
Unprepared
time
to be entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Why did you do that? Why did you? You said you're an author. Yep, you're an author. You've got a book there, but why?
Why?
Did anybody? Did you not have the fear that anybody going to bloody read this thing?
I am very good at saying yes to things. I just announced, we have an app coming out. I did that purposefully. Now I feel like I need to actually go and do it. Does that make sense?
You will, because I will check in on you.
Absolutely, but that's why I do it. It's about being accountable. So the book came in a really funny way. We started in March 2020. We were doing a lot of online stuff, right? Because it was the pandemic and everything was virtual. I started doing a lot of value add and skill swapping workshops. What I mean by that is in the beginning 6 months, I wasn't paid for anything, right? And it's really important to also recognize you don't just start getting paid for things straight away. But during that workshop, and it was about, I think, that networking and the power of LinkedIn and personal branding, I was like, one thing I'd love to do one time in my life is to write a book. And it wasn't I'd love to do it tomorrow, but one time. And at the same time, I was building my business. And I recognized that a lot of resources at that point, around 2022, that was out there was not representative of my culture, my savings, my identity. And it seemed like everything was behind a paywall. I didn't have those kind of finances. And so at the end of that workshop that I delivered, a member of the audience, I guess, loved the workshop so much that she came to me and she said, look, I know that this is something you want to do in your life, but I'm actually connected to a publishing editor. And I think both your story and what you want to write about would be great. So you just want to have a conversation with her. And I was like, yeah, I'll have a conversation. Like, what's a conversation going to do? That conversation was in August. It turned into a pitch and a proposal. So I sat over the weekend writing out a proposal. Originally it was called Strategically Winging It. But the publishing house didn't like that title. So we moved it to Unprepared to Entrepreneur. I got my loved ones and my close friends all to check that proposal, right? Most of my checks are done by people in my immediate network. Yeah. Sent it off.
That's the power of the network.
Absolutely. Sent it off. And a couple of weeks, they were like, we love it. We want to give you a book deal. And I was like, what do you mean? Like this... We were just messing around. Like, you can't actually be serious. And I remember it really, really well because my friend and I were in Windsor and we were sitting down to eat. And just as soon as our food came, the phone call came. So the food got cold and she's looking at me being like, I get it, you're busy, but, this is my time. The contract came. I got, the contract checked over. I said yes. And that was in September 2022. And the final draft was due in April. And then I got imposter syndrome for 2 months and I did absolutely nothing. I did everything, including like running and jogging and like going into like fitness and whatnot, right? Learning to cook, except writing. And then I sat down and started writing. And I guess the big why is because it was a resource that I needed that I couldn't find. And so I wanted to make sure that when people are ready to take a risk on their dreams, that they have something which is within affordability. Mm-hmm. And it's representative, not just their story, but other stories. So you've got 11 chapters, 10 case studies, 30 contributors by design. Not because I felt like my voice wasn't powerful enough, but because I didn't know enough. And I wanted to really understand what people are doing within their own journey. So it was very similar to me interviewing, but basically in a book. Yeah. And it did really well. And the one thing that I was just very firm on, I was like, I want the colour to be reddish. That was genuinely the only thing I really cared about.
And why?
Because LMF colours were reddish.
Yeah.
But generally...
But why are LMF colours reddish?
Oh, God knows. Honestly, why is it called Like-Minded Females? Honestly, at that point, it was... I just got in touch with Canva. The logo came. The colour came. I put it together and I put it out. And then we moved forward. But I think the reddish coral... One was like Pantone Colour of the Year around 2019 or so. So my TED Talk has a bit of red too. Secondly, it's because I really love this kind of colour, like my nails are this colour. But thirdly, it's because it doesn't have a great association. So when you think of red or like coral, people often is like, you're angry and you're fiery. I'm like, but you're passionate and you're feisty and you're loving and you're trustworthy. And there's something that really grounds you because you are not afraid to take risks. And I feel like that colour really represents me. So I wanted it to represent
You've taken
the
a lot of
entrepreneurs
risks
in the world. Absolutely. So there was a bit of colour psychology behind it. But also there was market research. I went to a lot of bookstores, online and offline. And I was like, right, most book colours are white and beige or yellow.
Okay.
Yeah. But now that I've said it.
I will go look.
No, now that I've said it, you'll go notice. You're like, yeah, actually a lot of them are like yellow or white and beige. And I was like, right, I want mine to be slightly different so that when you walk into the store.
Stands out.
It kind of stands out. A little bit like me. So I wanted to kind of, profile me and my identity in a book per se.
Brilliant. So talking about you and founder metrics, as we said, there's all sorts of different stuff, but very rarely do founders look at themselves. You've talked earlier about how you have been reflecting on your own personal journey, but have you got any thoughts or wisdom to share with other founders about knowing how they assess or have a metric or a signal around their own personal well-being?
Yeah, I think it's a really good
question. Because it's easy to miss.
It's super easy to miss. And I think a lot of it comes from self-discovery. So I've taken years to do that. It's not something overnight. I think also think about your energy levels. So knowing how you work. when I used to be at university, I used to be a night owl, so I'd study in the nighttime. But when I started working in corporate, my routine changed, and I realized that I generally am quite a morning person. So I wake up 6 a.m. I do like the hefty work in the morning. After lunch, I go into a bit of a slump, and then after lunch I go into a little bit of a slump, so I need a cup of tea. And then after about 6 p.m, I'm useless, but I want to get on with my day. So I would say for anyone who is interested, start noting down your energy and where your energy is most productive and where you're, basically when things are working for you. 2, so we were talking about this earlier, but I've had chronic migraines for the last 7 to 8 years. And there was a point where I used to get them 2 or 3 times a week. And I'd still work through them.
Yeah.
That's not a great thing. I'm not saying that being like, oh, I worked through it. If anything,
Yeah.
I should have not worked through them, because now my pain tolerance has gone up, but also my brain hurts a lot. And so you have to take a step back. And recently I've been going through my ADHD diagnosis. So that's also made me realize that actually founders have a lot of stuff to do. And I write about in chapter 11 where I talk about productive procrastination. I'm very good at procrastinating. So what I start doing at the beginning of the week is I'll make lists of things to do in the home, in admin, in life, in finance, in fun, everything that I want to do that week. And so I chop and change and do the high priorities first, and then I'll focus on the fun things, because fun is really important for me too. And then the last thing is know your burnout signals. So I love to talk, if you haven't noticed. Love it.
This is a good
Just
sort of
gonna let you
guest to
know,
have.
love it. However, when I stop talking, everyone should be concerned. And I've recognized that is my body being like, you need to stop or you're going to fall down. So a big signal is knowing your natural self and knowing when you're going against it. So when I start being mute or stop talking, or I look like I'm in a daze, or I'm just not responding to people, I am going into a bad place. And so a lot of it is self-assessment and just taking a step back, being like, why am I not responding in a sarcastic way to this question or this opinion? Red flag. Let me take myself away. And I digital detox. I offload my apps. I make sure that once a year I go on a completely luxury wellness break that has, everything included. I'm not with my phone. I read a lot of fiction. I have a work phone and a life phone. And I've now started doing a lot of research when it comes to the brain and burnout. So, there's studies to show that if you are offline for a minimum of 3 days, it can rewire your brain, your neurons, and the way you think. But also, your most creative ideas come when you are not online and when you're not exhausted. And so I know that as a founder, if I want to do well, and other founders want to do well, you can only be best for your business when you're best in yourself. And so it's better take a pause and to just straighten yourself out than it is to carry on going, because not only will you burn out, but your business definitely will crumble too.
I think that's a really powerful statement, actually. And one that, going back to what you were saying about when you were working hard while you had migraines and so on, at one stage that may have been seen as a badge of honour, whereas actually the real badge of wisdom is to take that as a signal, step back.
So much of our life, like our teens is for figuring it out, our 20s is for messing up. Our 20s is for failing. Our 20s is for trying. I think in your 30s is when you find this point of like, oh, okay, now I want to do something, I want to focus. But you're going to be doing that till you're like 70, 80. You might as well enjoy what you're doing. But also, I love that fable, the tortoise and the hare. It's something I live by now. I'm like, why have I always tried to be a hare my whole life? No, I'm a tortoise. Slow and steady will win the race. You're only really competing with yourself. And one thing that I've learned from our personal brand and professional brand is people buy into you and your story. So I need to make sure my story is good enough for people to actually want to come back, right? And so it's not about, if someone does it before you, there's a bunch of things that people are going to do and ideas are always going to pop off. How are you able to innovate, ideate, adapt, keep on going, be responsible for what you're building, have the right metrics to measure, and make sure that you're here for the long time? I
think that is a brilliant message to walk away with. Who are you really competing with? It's really yourself, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And on that message, Sonya, I'd just like to say a massive, massive thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in today, sharing your experience, your journey, and the things that help you gauge success and failure both in business and life. Thank you very much, Sonya.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Founder Metrics. Remember, even the biggest of ambitions are within your reach when you leverage the right strategies and metrics. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and never miss a future episode. You can visit vested.com, Founder Metrics, for additional resources, articles, and exclusive content. Join our growing community of entrepreneurs and founders by following us on LinkedIn or X. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Together, let's continue to unlock the metrics of success, sharing, and create a brighter future.